Simple idea of my page, the source page, has a link to some other page somewhere else on the web, right? So we're all familiar with this. And just as XML sort of gave us the ability to do custom tags, tags that are not just HTML markup, but extensible tags, RDF gives us the ability to create custom links. So we take the XML custom tags, now we add custom relationships that we specify and create links between different data, different data sets. An example, this is the gentle introduction to the triple and how it's deployed on the web, is so my source page is now the subject, some subject, an entity, a data entity that I'm talking about. And when I dereference that over the web, there'll be a predicate, some relationship, some property that links it to some other object on the web. So triples, subject, predicate, object. And that's the basic idea of the resource description framework, the RDF standard. So the result of that is this linked data cloud. So this is from a site that is linkdata.org. And the idea here is that the web is the database. So all of the information across all these sites are interlinked and related to each other, but owned and operated and designed and developed independently and autonomously. So this is how we start to get the idea that this integration doesn't necessarily have to occur with sort of a one ring to rule them all kind of strategy where everybody has to develop a shared controlled vocabulary. So you'll hear it referred to as the giant global graph is something that Tim Berners-Lee likes to say. But the key here again is that this is all accessible over the web that we already have. So this is just an innovation on top of the web invention to give us linked data. There's already a lot of government data in this linked data cloud. Most of it has been done by folks that grab that data and put it out as RDF, such as what Rensselaer did with Data.gov data. And so the PML will be engaged in us, the government agencies ourselves, actually exposing our data in this manner. So some simple design principles. Touched on this a little bit. The universal resource identifier is the key to things on the web. Those things may actually be resources that are not information resources or information objects. They could be people, they could be buildings, it could be the Bedford Springs Resort. So the idea of content negotiation, or shortened as ConNeg in the community, is again a mechanism that's built into the web. So when you make a request of a web server, your agent, your browser, or your application can specify whether or not it prefers a human-readable or machine-readable thing. And so you can be redirected or see also, or any number of mechanisms to get the information resource that represents Bedford Springs. And that can be returned to you as you state your preference. So I want machine-readable data, or I want human-readable data. So all that's built into the web, and linked data begins with that idea. So there are a lot of different protocols that can be used for URIs, and the basic guidance here is to use HTTP. It's the ubiquitous broker of information that we're all engaged with on a daily basis. So this get verb is built into the web. It's the thing that your browser does when you get a page. And there's also put and post, and these are analogous to CRUD with data, create, read, update, delete. So these are all things built into the web, and that's referred to as dereferencing. So number 3 is use the standards to express your data. So RDF and Sparkle, we talked about briefly, the query language Sparkle, and what does Sparkle query? It queries RDF data. So number 4 include, this is the follow your nose principle. So when you dereference some data on the web, you want to point to other data on the web. So if you're a person or a machine, you can then follow that link to some other data set. And that's how the cloud, the data cloud, becomes interconnected. So let's talk about vocabularies a little bit. Okay, so I'm an architect. You can let me have one of these sort of slides. This is a data model that represents vocabulary. It's It's a vocabulary from the object management group. It's called the business motivation model, and I'm using it here as an example for vocabularies just because it's something that we can all relate to. So it talks about ends, like goals and objectives, and it talks about means to those ends, like long-term strategies and short-term tactics, and things of that nature. So here's more of a business view of what this vocabulary says. And so I guess if I can manage this little pointer here, you may be able to see this. There's some iconography. Here's a target that represents a goal. So this is metadata. We're talking about a vocabulary that has a concept of a goal and a word that we use, goal, to denote that concept of something we're trying to achieve. And we see that there's a relationship here between, my little pointer go, there it is, between a strategy and a goal. So strategy channels effort towards a goal, right? So this is literally the triple as it's represented in this particular vocabulary. So if you look down at the bottom here, I'm describing 1, 2, 3. So strategy channels effort towards goal. Subject, predicate, object, 1, 2, 3, right? Or strategy defines an offering, such as a shared service. Objective quantifies a goal, right? So these are all triple statements in simple grammar that RDF gives us, subject, predicate, and object. So this is a little bit based on things that HHS is engaged with, and this is now an example of instance data that uses this management vocabulary. So at HHS, folks are concerned, maybe a little hard for you to see, concerned with objectives like meaningful use. Right? We want to be able to determine how electronic health records are being exchanged, which is expressed here, EHR exchange, as a goal. So now we have triples that are actually instance data. Electronic health record exchange is a goal, meaningful use is an objective, meaningful use quantifies health record exchange. So these are instance data triples that use this metadata vocabulary of the business motivation model. So there's a pattern in how this RDF gets created from the existing open government data. Spreadsheets are always a great example to relate to. So this pattern shows us how we create a vocabulary from the implicit metadata that we use quite a lot in spreadsheets in our day-to-day work. The idea is basically, well, there's some, in this example, this comes from Semantic, the IT dashboard. And so we take the worksheet name and we consider that a class of information. And all of the column names is the attributes of that class. And so when we have a record or a row in a spreadsheet, that becomes an instance where, an instance of that class, where the cell data for each column is the data, the object of the predicate that relates to that record key of that class. So that's how subject, predicate, object gets created out of spreadsheet data. So here's a key, a UPI for in an Exhibit 300. And so agency name is a property or a predicate, and Department of Health and Human Services is the data in that cell. So subject, predicate, object, right? So we talked a little bit about vocabulary, so let's look at some URI schemes. How does this stuff get deployed on this so-called web of data? So this is exemplary. This is not something that is happening now. And I told Phil I was using OMB as an example here. It makes sense if we're talking about a management vocabulary, that this would be the type of thing where OMB might be the authoritative source of that vocabulary. And again, this is notional. This is not something that we're doing right now, but it's reasonably logical. So there would be a site that might be called schema.omb.gov. It might be called vocab.omb.gov, or your favorite term for metadata, whatever that might be. And there might be a subject that's identified in the reference